The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched out like a massive bowl, with thousands of seats arranged in perfect circles. Each seat held a different alien species, their forms ranging from the tall, graceful Stori with their blue skin, and flowing robes to the heavily armored Kreks, who looked like walking tanks. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Zektar of the Hegemony, his 6 arms gesturing dramatically as he spoke. "Fellow council members," Zektar's voice echoed through the chamber, translated instantly into hundreds of languages. "We gather today to discuss the humans' pathetic request to join our civilized community." Laughter rippled through the seats. "These primitive creatures dare to think they belong among us." Zektar waved one of his hands, and a holographic display appeared above the chamber. It showed grainy footage of human ships, large, gray, and blocky vessels that looked more like flying metal boxes than proper starships. "Look at their so-called warships," Zektar continued. "No energy shields, no plasma weapons. They still use kinetic projectiles like some ancient civilization. Their largest vessels move like wounded beasts through space." More laughter filled the chamber. Ambassador Velthara of the Swift Wind Empire stood up, her silver form shimmering. "Surely, you jest, Zektar. These humans cannot even travel faster than light without those crude jump drives. Our ships dance through hyperspace while theirs lumber along like cargo haulers." "Exactly my point," Zektar replied. "They have nothing to offer us. No advanced technology. No unique resources we cannot take ourselves. They are simply another primitive species that needs to learn their place in the galaxy." The massive form of War Chief Grendok of the Krek's Dominion rose from his seat. His voice was like grinding stone. "Perhaps we should teach them this lesson personally. A small demonstration would suffice." "I agree," said Zektar. "A few of our patrol fleets could easily handle their outer colonies. Once they see the power of true civilization, they will accept their role as a minor species under our protection." The vote was swift and unanimous. The humans' request was denied. More than that, the Council authorized protective interventions in human space to maintain galactic stability. Far away from the Council chambers, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Titan, one of Earth's most powerful Dreadnought battleships. The Titan was everything the aliens had mocked, large, gray, and built like a fortress. Its hull was covered in armor plates thick enough to stop most weapons. Rows of railgun turrets jutted out from its sides like the spines of some metal beast. "Captain," called Communications Officer Lisa Park from her station, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command." Jake nodded. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Lisa Bennett sitting in her office on Earth. Her face was calm, but Jake could see the tension in her eyes. "Jake," she said without preamble, "the Galactic Council has rejected our membership request. They called us primitive and suggested we need their protection." Jake felt his jaw tighten. "I see. Any other news from our galactic neighbors?" "Intelligence reports suggest several alien fleets are moving toward our border systems. Nothing official, but the pattern is clear. They're planning something." Jake looked out at the stars through the bridge windows. The Titan was patrolling the edge of human space, watching for exactly this kind of trouble. "Orders, Admiral?" "Continue your patrol route. Keep your sensors active. And Jake?" Bennett paused. "Make sure your weapons systems are fully charged." The connection ended, leaving Jake alone with his thoughts. He walked over to the tactical station where Lieutenant Sam Hughes was studying sensor readings. "What do you think, Sam?" Jake asked. "How long before they come calling?" Sam looked up from his screens. "Based on fleet movements, I'd say within the week." They're positioning squadrons near New Montana and Haven's Rest. Classic intimidation formation. Jake nodded. The aliens always followed the same pattern. They would choose a lightly defended human colony, make a show of force, demand surrender, and expect immediate compliance. It had worked for them against dozens of other species over the centuries, but they had never fought humans before. "Sir," called Weapons Officer Tony Martinez from his station. "All railgun batteries report ready. Missile tubes loaded and armed. Point defense systems online." "Good," Jake replied. "Have the crew run another combat drill in 2 hours. Make sure everyone knows their job." As the crew prepared for what might come, Jake thought about the alien mindset. They saw the Titan and ships like her as primitive because they used old-fashioned kinetic weapons instead of flashy energy beams. They laughed at human armor because they relied on energy shields. They mocked human tactics because humans preferred direct approaches over fancy maneuvers. What the aliens didn't understand was that humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. Every weapon, every armor plate, every tactical doctrine had been tested in real combat against enemies who were just as smart and just as determined. Human military technology wasn't primitive. It was proven. The Titan's railguns could fire projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. When a tungsten rod moving that fast hit something, energy shields might as well be made of paper. Human missiles didn't rely on single warheads. They carried multiple sub-munitions designed to overwhelm point defenses through sheer numbers. Most importantly, human ships were built to take damage and keep fighting. The Titan had multiple backup systems for every critical function. Its armor was designed to absorb impacts that would cripple other vessels. Its crew trained constantly for damage control and emergency repairs. The aliens had never faced an enemy that refused to quit. 3 days later, Jake's predictions came true. Long-range sensors detected a formation of ships approaching the New Montana system. The colony there was mostly miners and their families, protected by only a small defense. Station. "Sir," Sam reported, "I'm reading 3 hegemony cruisers moving toward New Montana. They're not responding to hails from the colony." Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. This was it. This was how the war would start. Helm, set course. For New Montana. Maximum speed. "Sir, even at full burn, we won't arrive for 6 hours. Then we'd better hope the colonists can hold out that long." Jake turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to Admiral Bennett. Tell her the aliens just made their first mistake." As the Titan began its race toward New Montana, Jake wondered if the Galactic Council had any idea what they had just started. They thought they were dealing with a primitive species that would roll over at the first show of force. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The mining colony of New Montana hung in space like a small city of lights. Orbital platforms surrounded the asteroid where 50,000 humans lived and worked, extracting rare metals from the rock. It was a peaceful place, far from the politics and conflicts of the inner systems. That peace shattered when 3 hegemony cruisers dropped out of hyperspace. Commander Sarah Walsh stood in the colony's control center, watching the alien ships approach on her screens. She had been a military officer before taking this civilian job, and she recognized a combat formation when she saw one. "Open a channel," she ordered her communications officer. "Channel open, Commander." "Unidentified vessels. This is New Montana Control. You are entering human territory without permission. Please state your intentions." The response came quickly, translated by the colony's computers. The voice was cold and mechanical. "Primitive humans, you will surrender immediately. Your resistance to galactic authority ends now. Prepare to be boarded. Sarah felt her hands clench into fists. Like hell we will. All stations. This is a colony-wide alert. Activate emergency protocols. Throughout New Montana, alarms began to sound. Miners dropped their tools and ran for the emergency shelters deep inside the asteroid. The orbital defense platforms, small and lightly armed, powered up their weapons. The lead hegemony cruiser was a beautiful ship in its own way. Its hull was smooth and curved, made of some kind of exotic metal that seemed to shift colors in the light. Energy crackled along its surface as its shields activated. It was 3 times larger than the biggest human defense platform and armed with weapons that could reduce mountains to vapor. Human colony, the alien voice came again. You have 30 seconds to surrender or we will demonstrate the power of civilized species. Sarah knew the defense platforms couldn't win this fight. Their small plasma cannons were meant to deal with pirates and smugglers, not military cruisers. But she also knew that help was coming. She had sent the distress signal the moment the aliens appeared. All defense platforms, she broadcast on the military channel. Engage the enemy, make them work for it. The platforms opened fire first, sending bright bolts of plasma toward the alien ships. The energy beams struck the cruiser's shields and dissipated harmlessly, like rain hitting a window. In response, the aliens fired back with their main weapons, beams of pure energy that cut through the platforms like they were made of paper. One by one, the defense platforms died. Sarah watched each explosion on her screen and felt a piece of her heart break. Good people were dying up there, buying. Time for the evacuation. Commander, her sensor operator called out. Something's coming out of hyperspace. Big signature. Sarah looked at her screen and smiled for the first time since this nightmare began. The UES Titan had arrived. The human Dreadnought emerged from its jump like a metal mountain appearing from nowhere. Unlike the graceful alien cruisers, the Titan looked exactly like what it was, a warship built for one purpose. Its gray hull was scarred from previous battles, and its weapons were already extending from their armored housings. On the Titan's bridge, Captain Jake Morrison took in the situation at a glance. 2 defense platforms were already gone, and the third was badly damaged. The alien cruisers had formed a triangle formation around the colony, their energy weapons charging for what looked like a bombardment. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Sam Hughes from the sensor station. 3 hegemony cruisers, Mako class. Heavy shields, plasma beam weapons, standard hegemony armor. They're powering up for a surface bombardment. Jake felt cold fury wash over him. These aliens were about to murder 50,000 civilians to make a point. "Weapons," he called to Tony Martinez. "Target the lead cruiser, full broadside." "Sir, they're not responding to our hails. They don't seem to consider us a threat." That was their first mistake. Fire. The Titan's port side erupted in light and thunder. 12 railgun turrets fired simultaneously, each launching a tungsten projectile at tremendous speed. At the same time, missile tubes opened and released a swarm of warheads that spread out like angry hornets. The alien commander aboard the lead cruiser was named Keldar, and he had been laughing about the primitive human weapons just seconds before. His laughter died when his sensor officer screamed a warning. "Impact in 3 seconds! Multiple projectiles incoming!" Keldar watched in growing horror as the human projectiles closed the distance. His ship's energy shields, which had easily deflected the defense platform weapons, suddenly seemed very inadequate. The railgun rounds hit first. Each tungsten rod carried the kinetic energy of a small nuclear bomb, and when they struck the energy shields, physics took over. The shields tried to disperse the energy but simply couldn't handle the raw force. They collapsed like soap bubbles. With the shields down, the remaining railgun rounds punched through the cruiser's armor like it was made of cardboard. Explosions rippled along the hull as the projectiles tore through decks and compartments. Then the missiles arrived. Each missile carried multiple warheads designed to separate just before impact. What had been 20 missiles became 80 smaller, projectiles that overwhelmed the cruiser's point defenses. Explosions bloomed all along the ship's surface. Within 30 seconds of the Titan's first salvo, the lead hegemony cruiser was drifting dead in space, atmosphere venting from dozens of holes in its hull. The other two alien commanders, Veltar and Grixnal, stared at their screens in shock. Their formation leader had just been destroyed by a single volley from the primitive human ship. "Impossible," whispered Veltar. "Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields." "The shields are gone," his sensor officer reported, voice shaking. "The kinetic impact overloaded them instantly." Grixnal was quicker to react. "All weapons target the human ship, full power." Both surviving cruisers turned toward the Titan and opened fire with everything they had. Brilliant beams of plasma energy lanced out across space, striking the human dreadnought's hull. The alien weapons were powerful, designed to melt through the strongest armor. But the Titan had been built by a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of armor. The energy beams carved furrows in the hull plating but failed to penetrate to vital systems. "Damage report," Jake called out as the ship shook under the alien fire. "Minor damage to outer hull sections. Armor is holding. No casualties reported." Jake nodded grimly. The aliens' energy weapons were impressive to look at, but they were designed to deal with ships that relied on shields for protection. Against heavy armor, they were far less effective. "Return fire. Target both remaining ships." The Titan's weapons spoke again. This time, both alien cruisers took the full fury of human engineering. Railgun rounds and missiles crossed space in seconds, striking ships whose shields had already been reconfigured to try to stop kinetic impacts. It didn't work. The second cruiser exploded in a brilliant fireball when a railgun round found its reactor. The third tried to run, but a spread of missiles caught it before it could escape, crippling its engines and leaving it drifting helplessly. In less than 5 minutes, the mighty hegemony squadron had been reduced to wreckage, and one crippled survivor. Down on New Montana, Commander Sarah Walsh watched the battle end and felt tears running down her cheeks. The miners and their families began emerging from the shelters, looking up at the stars where their protector waited. Captain Jake Morrison opened a channel to the surviving alien ship. "Hegemony vessel, this is Captain Morrison of the UES Titan. Your attack on this civilian colony was an act of war. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded." The response came after a long pause, the alien voice now filled with fear. "We surrender. Please do not destroy us." Jake looked at the wreckage floating around New Montana and felt no satisfaction. This had been necessary, but it was also just the beginning. When word of this battle reached the Galactic Council, they would not react well to having their forces humiliated by the primitive humans. "Sam," he called to his intelligence officer, "record everything. Battle footage, sensor logs, communications. Send it all to Admiral Bennett." "Already done, sir. The Admiral is going to want to see this." Jake nodded. The galaxy was about to learn its first lesson about humanity. They could mock human technology and call human tactics primitive. But when humans decided to fight, they fought to win, and they were very, very good at winning. Admiral Lisa Bennett sat in her office at Earth Command, watching the battle footage from New Montana for the third time. The holographic display showed the Titan's devastating attack on the hegemony cruisers, each railgun impact tearing through, alien shields like they were made of paper. "Computer, pause playback," she said quietly. The image froze on the moment when the lead cruiser's shields collapsed. "Analysis complete?" Her aide, Commander David Kim, nodded from across the desk. "Yes, Admiral. Intelligence confirms the aliens have never encountered kinetic weapons of this magnitude. Their shield technology is specifically designed to disperse energy-based attacks. They have no effective defense against high-velocity projectiles." Bennett leaned back in her chair, thinking. The victory at New Montana had been decisive, but it would not be the end. The Galactic Council would see this as an insult that demanded response. They would send more ships, larger fleets, and eventually they would adapt their tactics. "David, activate the Dreadnought protocol. I want every heavy unit recalled to active duty immediately." "All of them, Admiral. Every single one. And send personal messages to their commanders. Tell them the pack is being called to hunt." Across human space, the most feared ships in Earth's fleet began to move. These were not the regular patrol vessels or the defense platforms that guarded civilian colonies. These were the dreadnoughts, massive warships built specifically to fight other capital ships and win. Captain Ryan Cross received his orders while the UES Wolverine was docked at Titan Station for routine maintenance. The Wolverine was slightly smaller than the Titan, but packed with weapons that had earned it a reputation as the most aggressive ship in the fleet. In 15 years of service, it had never lost a battle. Cross was a veteran of the corporate wars, back when human companies had their own private fleets, and territory disputes were settled with railgun rounds. He understood better than most. That space combat was about one thing: putting more firepower on target than the enemy could handle. "Charlie," he called to his executive officer, Commander Charlie Bennett, the Admiral's younger brother. "How long to get us combat ready?" 6 hours to complete weapons checks and reload the missile magazines. 12 hours if you want the new, armor plating installed. 6 hours. We can upgrade the armor later. Right now, speed is more important." Meanwhile, at the Ceres shipyard, Commander Amy Foster was preparing the UES Thunderbolt for departure. The Thunderbolt was the newest dreadnought in the fleet, equipped with experimental weapon systems that had never been tested in real combat. Foster herself was one of the youngest ship commanders in Earth's fleet, but she had graduated first in her class from the Naval Academy and had a mind for tactics that impressed even veteran officers. "Engineering," she called over the ship's intercom. "How are those new railgun systems looking?" "All green, Commander," came the reply from Chief Engineer Maria Santos. "The enhanced magnetic coils are showing perfect alignment. These guns will hit harder and faster than anything we fielded before." Foster smiled. The Thunderbolt's weapons were designed for alpha strikes, overwhelming an enemy with massive firepower in the first few seconds of combat. If her calculations were correct, she could cripple most alien ships before they even realized they were under attack. The recall order reached ships throughout human territory, from the mining stations in the asteroid belt to the agricultural colonies on the rim. Earth's most powerful warships began their journey home. Each one was a legend in its own right, commanded by officers who had proven themselves in combat against pirates, corporate fleets, and the occasional alien raider. But while the human dreadnoughts assembled, the aliens were planning their own response. In the council chambers of the Confederation, a different group of alien species was meeting to discuss the human problem. Admiral Zexqui of the Confederation Navy was a professional soldier, unlike the politicians who had dismissed humanity so easily. He studied the footage from New Montana with the eye of someone who understood warfare. "Counselors," he addressed the assembled alien leaders, "we have underestimated these humans. Their weapons are crude but effective. Their tactics are direct but successful. We cannot treat them as we have other primitive species." Counselor Velthara, her silver form shimmering with agitation, spoke up. "Surely you exaggerate, Admiral. One lucky battle does not make them a threat to our entire civilization." "With respect, Counselor, there was nothing lucky about this engagement. The humans used superior firepower and better tactics to achieve victory against a numerically superior force. They are dangerous." War Chief Morgek of the Krex Dominion slammed his massive fist on the table. "Then we crush them before they become more dangerous. I will lead the attack myself." Admiral Zexqui nodded slowly. "Very well. But this time, we send a real fleet. No more patrol squadrons. I want battle groups, heavy cruisers, and our best commanders." "Where do we strike?" asked Velthara. "Haven's Rest," replied Zexqui after consulting his star charts. "It's their largest agricultural colony, with over 2 million civilians. If we can capture it intact, we can use it as leverage against the rest of human space." The plan was sound from an alien perspective. Haven's Rest was indeed important to human food production, and its capture would be a significant blow. What the aliens didn't know was that Admiral Bennett had anticipated exactly this kind of escalation. 3 days later, the Confederation fleet arrived at Haven's Rest. It was an impressive force: 12 heavy cruisers, 24 destroyers, and support vessels carrying troops for the planned occupation. Admiral Zexqui commanded from his flagship, the Sovereign's Wrath, confident that this overwhelming force would succeed where the smaller patrol had failed. Haven's Rest itself was a beautiful world, with golden fields stretching to the horizon, and peaceful farming communities scattered across 3 continents. The orbital infrastructure was minimal: a few cargo stations and a single defense platform that looked pathetically small compared to the alien fleet. "Human colony," Admiral Zexqui broadcast as his ships took up bombardment positions. "This is Admiral Zexqui of the Confederation Fleet. You will surrender immediately and prepare for occupation. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your cities." The response came from the planet's governor, an elderly woman named Patricia Wells, who had been a Marine officer before retiring to civilian life. "Admiral, this is Governor Wells. I'm afraid I can't do that. You see, we called for help, and help is on the way." Zexaqui looked at his sensor displays. Nothing showed except empty space. "Governor, I see no ships coming to your aid. Do not force me to demonstrate our weapons against your population centers." "Oh, the ships are here," Governor Wells replied calmly. "You just haven't seen them yet." At that moment, 3 human dreadnoughts decloaked simultaneously. They had been waiting in the asteroid field at the edge of the system, their stealth systems hiding them from alien sensors until the perfect moment. The UES Titan appeared first, dropping its camouflage and immediately launching missiles. The UES Wolverine materialized off the alien fleet's starboard flank, its railguns already charging. The UES Thunderbolt came online directly behind the enemy formation, its experimental weapons systems powering up for maximum effect. Admiral Zexaqui stared at his tactical display in shock. 3 human ships against his entire battle group should have been suicide for the humans. But something about their positioning and the coordinated timing of their appearance suggested this was no desperate last stand. "All ships," he ordered, Engage the human vessels. Focus fire and destroy them quickly. But the human dreadnoughts had not come to Haven's Rest to die. They had come to hunt. Captain Morrison aboard the Titan opened fire first, targeting the alien flagship with a full spread of missiles. The projectiles spread out in a complex pattern designed to overwhelm point defenses from multiple angles. Captain Cross on the Wolverine attacked the alien formation's flank, his railgun sending tungsten rods into the closely packed enemy ships. The aliens had arranged themselves for planetary bombardment, not ship-to-ship combat, and their formation was vulnerable to this kind of assault. Commander Foster on the Thunderbolt delivered the killing blow. Her experimental railguns fired in sequence, each shot precisely targeted to hit enemy ships that were already damaged by her allies' attacks. The coordinated firepower was devastating. In less than 2 minutes, 6 alien cruisers were destroyed, or crippled. The remainder of the fleet found itself scattered and confused, trying to fight 3 enemies that seemed to anticipate their every move. The truth was simpler than the aliens realized. The 3 human captains had trained together for years. Morrison, Cross, and Foster knew each other's tactics so well they could coordinate attacks without even speaking. They fought not as 3 separate ships, but as a single entity with 3 parts. Admiral Zexqui tried to rally his remaining forces, but it was too late. The human ships had already achieved their objective, breaking up his formation and eliminating his heavy hitters. Now they could pick off the survivors at their leisure. "All ships," he finally ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. "Withdraw immediately. Full retreat." As the surviving alien vessels fled toward the edge of the system, Governor Wells opened a channel to the 3 dreadnoughts. "Captain, the Battle of Haven's Rest had lasted exactly 17 minutes and 32 seconds. When it was over, 12 alien warships were either destroyed or drifting dead in space, and the remaining fleet was fleeing in panic toward the edge of the system." Lieutenant Sam Hughes aboard the UES Titan watched his sensor display as the last alien ship jumped to hyperspace. "Sir, all enemy vessels have left the system. Should we pursue?" Captain Jake Morrison studied the tactical display for a moment. The 3 human dreadnoughts had worked together like parts of a single machine, their attacks perfectly coordinated. It had been beautiful to watch in a terrifying sort of way. "Negative, Sam. Our job here is done. Send a full battle report to Admiral Bennett and make sure you include the coordination data. She'll want to see how well the pack tactics worked." On the UES Wolverine, Captain Ryan Cross was having a similar conversation with his executive officer. "Charlie, what's our ammunition status?" Commander Charlie Bennett checked his displays. "We fired 60% of our railgun rounds and 40% of our missiles. Still, plenty left for another engagement." Cross nodded approvingly. The Wolverine had been in the thick of the fighting, drawing enemy fire while the other 2 ships maneuvered for killing shots. His ship had taken some damage, but nothing that couldn't be repaired. "Good. Have the crew run damage control drills while we're en route to the rendezvous point. I want us ready for the next fight." Meanwhile, aboard the UES Thunderbolt, Commander Amy Foster was reviewing the performance data from her experimental weapons systems. The enhanced railguns had worked even better than expected, delivering precise shots that had crippled enemy vessels with surgical efficiency. "Chief Santos," she called to her engineering officer, "what's the status on the new weapons?" "All systems performed within acceptable parameters, Commander. The magnetic coil alignment held steady throughout the engagement. I'd say the weapons are ready for full deployment." Foster smiled. The Thunderbolt had been designed as a proof of concept, testing new technologies that might be used on future dreadnoughts. Today's battle had proven that human engineering was not just keeping pace with alien technology, It was surpassing it. As the three dreadnoughts formed up and headed away from Haven's Rest, none of their crews realized that their battle had been witnessed by more than just the aliens they had defeated. Throughout the galaxy, intelligence services and military observers had been monitoring human space since the incident at New Montana. The Battle of Haven's Rest had been recorded by hidden sensors and spy satellites. On the homeworld of the Swift Wind Empire, Admiral Sildar reviewed the battle footage with growing unease. The Swift Wind Empire prided itself on having the fastest ships in the galaxy, vessels that could dance through combat while slower enemies struggled to keep up. "Tactical analysis," he ordered his staff officers. "Sir," replied his aide, a young officer named Velnix. "The human ships show remarkable coordination. They appear to have trained extensively in combined operations. What about their weapons? The kinetic projectiles travel too fast for our ships to evade at close range. Our speed advantage would only matter if we could maintain distance. But their missile systems have impressive range and tracking capability." Admiral Sildar studied the footage again, watching the human dreadnoughts maneuver. They were not graceful ships by alien standards. They looked like flying fortresses, all armor and weapons, but they moved with purpose, each ship supporting the others in a deadly dance of destruction. "Recommendation?" he asked. Velnix hesitated before answering. "Sir, I recommend we avoid direct confrontation with human military forces until we better understand their capabilities." In another part of the galaxy, the massive Krex Dominion was reaching similar conclusions. War Chief Grendok watched the battle recordings while his advisors discussed tactics. "Their armor appears vulnerable to our heavy plasma weapons," reported Chief Engineer Mordak. "But only if we can maintain sustained fire. The battle ended too quickly for proper analysis." "What about their defenses?" Grendok asked. "Impressive. They absorbed multiple direct hits from Confederation heavy cruisers without significant damage. Their armor philosophy appears different from ours. Less energy dispersion, more direct absorption of impact." Grendok's massive form shifted in his command chair. The Krex had built their military doctrine around the idea that bigger was always better. Their ships were enormous, heavily armored behemoths that could pound smaller vessels into scrap. But the human dreadnoughts had shown that size alone was not enough. "Continue monitoring human activities," he ordered. "I want to know more about these ships before we face them in battle." But while the major alien powers were reconsidering their assumptions about humanity, others were drawing different lessons from the Battle of Haven's Rest. In the criminal underworld of the galaxy, pirate leaders and smuggler chiefs watched the recordings with professional interest. Captain Zargul of the Crimson Fleet was a notorious pirate who had raided shipping lanes throughout the Rim territories for decades. His fleet consisted of fast attack ships designed to overwhelm merchant vessels and escape before military forces could respond. "Interesting," he mused, watching the human ships coordinate their attack. "These humans fight like pack hunters, not like the civilized species with their formal battle lines and preset tactics." His lieutenant, a scarred veteran named Krix, nodded agreement. "Should we avoid human shipping, Captain?" Zargul considered the question. The human colonies were rich targets, full of valuable minerals and agricultural products. But the military response was clearly more dangerous than anyone had expected. "For now, yes. Let others test their defenses. We'll stick to easier prey." Similar conversations were happening throughout the criminal networks that operated in the spaces between legitimate governments. The reputation of human military forces was growing with each battle report. But perhaps the most significant reaction came from an unexpected source. In the academic halls of the Centauri University, Professor Welkan was teaching a class on military history when news of the battle reached him. "Students," he announced to his lecture hall full of young Centauri scholars, "we are witnessing the emergence of a new military doctrine. These humans are not fighting according to established galactic conventions." A student raised her hand. "Professor, what do you mean?" "Traditional galactic warfare emphasizes individual ship performance, speed, maneuverability, sophisticated weapon systems. But the humans are demonstrating the power of coordinated group tactics. Their ships are designed to fight together, not alone." Another student spoke up. "But surely their technology is still primitive compared to ours." Professor Welkan paused the battle footage at the moment when the human railguns struck the alien flagship. "Define primitive, student. These weapons may be based on simple kinetic principles, but their effectiveness is undeniable. Sometimes, the simplest solution is the best solution." The professor's words would be remembered by his students, many of whom would go on to serve in the Centauri military. Seeds of respect for human capabilities were being planted throughout the galaxy. Back in human space, the three Dreadnought captains met virtually for their post-battle briefing. Admiral Bennett's face appeared on their screens, looking pleased but cautious. "Excellent work, all of you," she began. "The coordination was flawless and the results speak for themselves, but this is just the beginning. Intelligence reports suggest the aliens are already adapting their tactics." "What's our next move, Admiral?" asked Captain Morrison. "We continue to demonstrate that attacking human territory has consequences. But we also need to be smart about this. The galaxy is watching us now, and our reputation is becoming our most powerful weapon." Captain Cross leaned forward. "Ma'am, the crew has been talking. They're calling us the Pack." Admiral Bennett smiled. "Let them. Fear is a force multiplier. And if the aliens want to be afraid of the Pack, that works in our favor." Commander Foster had a question. "Admiral, are we going to get reinforcements? 3 ships can't cover all of human space." "Already in motion, Amy. The shipyards are working around the clock to build more dreadnoughts. But until then, you 3 are the tip of the spear. The galaxy needs to see that humanity doesn't back down from a fight." As the briefing ended and the 3 ships continued their patrol, none of them knew that their names were already becoming legends throughout the galaxy. The Titan, the Wolverine, and the Thunderbolt were spoken of in whispers in alien military, academies, and taverns alike. They were the ships that had proven humanity belonged among the stars. More than that, they had shown that when humans decided to fight, they didn't just win battles, they redefined what victory meant. The Pack was hunting, and the galaxy was learning to be afraid. 3 weeks after the Battle of Haven's Rest, the galaxy was a different place. In military academies across dozens of worlds, instructors were updating their curricula to include case studies of human tactics. In government chambers, intelligence officers briefed nervous officials about the implications of kinetic weapons technology. In spacer bars and trading posts, veterans shared stories about the human ghost ships that could appear from nowhere and disappear just as quickly. Admiral Velthara of the Swift-Wind Empire sat in her private office aboard the flagship Celestial, Dancer reviewing intelligence reports that made her increasingly uncomfortable. The Swift-Wind Empire had built its military doctrine around speed and maneuverability, using hit-and-run tactics to wear down slower enemies. But the humans were proving that speed meant nothing if you couldn't avoid their weapons. "Admiral?" Her aide, Lieutenant Sylvan, entered with another data pad. The analysis of human point defense systems is complete. Velthera took the pad and read through the technical specifications. What she saw made her stomach sink. Human ships didn't just have a few defensive weapons. They were covered in them. Automated turrets, missile interceptors, and rapid fire. Cannons created overlapping fields of fire that would make it nearly impossible for her fast attack craft to get close enough to do meaningful damage. "Recommendation?" she asked. "Avoid engagement unless absolutely necessary. Our ships are not designed to penetrate this level of defensive coverage." Meanwhile, in the massive fortress worlds of the Krex Dominion, War Chief Grendock was receiving similar reports about human armor technology. The Krex had always believed that their heavy plasma weapons could cut through any defense, but the Battle of Haven's Rest had shown otherwise. Chief Engineer Mordak stood before a holographic display showing the damage patterns on human ships that had survived alien attacks. "War Chief, their armor appears to be designed in layers. The outer plating absorbs initial impact, while inner bulkheads contain secondary damage. It's incredibly efficient." "More efficient than our own armor?" Grendock asked. "In some ways, yes. Our armor is designed to disperse energy attacks. Theirs is designed to absorb kinetic impacts and keep fighting. Different philosophies for different threats." Grendock studied the display with the eye of someone who had spent centuries in combat. The humans were not just building ships differently, they were thinking about warfare differently. Instead of trying to avoid damage, they were designing their ships to take damage and continue fighting. But while the major powers were studying human military capabilities with growing respect, other species were drawing different conclusions. In the neutral zone between major empires, Captain Kate Sullivan of the UES Stormbreaker was about to demonstrate another aspect of human naval doctrine. The Stormbreaker was one of the newer dreadnoughts, built with lessons learned from earlier designs. It was on a diplomatic mission, escorting Ambassador Elena Rodriguez to a trade conference on the neutral world of Freeport Station. It should have been a routine assignment. Instead, they found themselves responding to a distress call from a civilian convoy under attack by pirates. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Marcus Webb from the communications station, "we're receiving a mayday from the merchant vessel Gentle Sunrise. They're being attacked by raiders approximately 6 light minutes from our position." Captain Sullivan studied the tactical display. The convoy consisted of 3 cargo ships carrying medical supplies to refugee camps in the Outer Rim. The attackers were a typical pirate formation, fast raiders designed to overwhelm merchant vessels and escape before military help could arrive. "Helm, set course for the convoy. Maximum speed." Ambassador Rodriguez, who had been observing from the bridge, spoke up. "Captain, our diplomatic mission—" "We'll have to wait, Ambassador. Those ships are carrying medical supplies for civilians. We're not going to let pirates steal medicine from refugees." The Stormbreaker dropped out of hyperspace 6 minutes later to find the convoy under heavy attack. 3 merchant ships were trying to protect themselves with their limited defensive weapons, while a dozen pirate raiders circled them like wolves around wounded prey. The pirate leader, Captain Vextar of the Bloody Claw, had been anticipating an easy victory. Merchant vessels were lightly armed and poorly defended. His ships could disable them quickly, steal their cargo, and escape before anyone noticed. He had not expected a human dreadnought to arrive. "Sir," his sensor officer called out in alarm. "Massive ship dropping out of hyperspace. It's broadcasting. Earth military codes." Vextar looked at his display and felt his confidence evaporate. The Stormbreaker was 3 times larger than his biggest ship and armed with weapons that could destroy his entire fleet. "All ships," he ordered, "break off the attack. We're leaving." But Captain Sullivan had other ideas. This is Captain Sullivan of the UES Stormbreaker. Pirate vessels. You are ordered to surrender immediately. Drop your shields and prepare to be boarded. Vexitar's response was predictable. Human ship, you are outnumbered 12 to 1. Withdraw, or we will destroy you. Sullivan almost smiled. Pirates were used to fighting merchant ships and poorly armed patrol vessels. They had no idea what a human dreadnought could do. All pirate vessels, you have 30 seconds to surrender. After that, I will consider you hostile and act accordingly. The pirates chose to fight. What followed was not really a battle, it was a demonstration. The Stormbreaker's weapon systems had been designed to engage multiple targets simultaneously, and 12 pirate raiders presented no real challenge. The human dreadnought opened fire with surgical precision. Railgun turrets tracked separate targets while missile launchers sent out carefully programmed warheads. The pirates' ships were fast and maneuverable, but they had been designed to fight cargo haulers, not military vessels. In less than 3 minutes, 8 pirate ships were destroyed, and the remaining 4 were drifting helplessly with their engines disabled. Captain Sullivan opened a channel to the convoy. "Merchant vessels, this is the Stormbreaker. Are you in need of assistance?" The response came from the lead cargo ship, its captain's voice shaky with relief. "Stormbreaker, this is Captain Alvar of the Gentle Sunrise. We have wounded aboard and engine damage, but we're space-worthy. Thank you for the rescue." "Our pleasure, Captain. We'll escort you to Freeport Station." As the convoy continued its journey under the protection of the human dreadnought, word of the rescue spread throughout the trading networks of the Outer Rim. The story grew in the telling. A single human warship had destroyed an entire pirate fleet to protect medical supplies bound for refugees. The political implications were significant. For decades, the various alien governments had struggled to control piracy in the neutral zones. They lacked the will or the resources to patrol the vast empty spaces between systems, but humanity was demonstrating that they would protect civilian shipping regardless of species or nationality. Ambassador Rodriguez, watching the rescued convoy from the Stormbreaker's observation deck, began to understand the broader strategy. "Captain, this wasn't just about saving those ships, was it?" Sullivan joined her at the viewport. "Ambassador, we're not just fighting a war here. We're establishing our reputation in the galaxy. Every pirate we stop, every convoy we protect, every colony we defend. It all adds up to the same message, which is that humanity stands for something. We protect the innocent, we keep our word, and we don't back down from bullies. The galaxy is learning that we're not just another aggressive species. We're the species you call when you need help." The ambassador nodded thoughtfully. The military victories were important, but this kind of action might be even more valuable. In the long run, fear could only take you so far. Respect, on the other hand, could last for generations. At Freeport Station, news of the rescue reached the local media networks within hours. The story was picked up by information services throughout the neutral zone, and from there it spread to the core worlds of the major empires. In the trading houses of the Centauri Republic, merchant captains began requesting human escorts for valuable cargoes. In the refugee camps of the Outer Rim, human medical supplies began arriving with increasing frequency. In the pirate strongholds scattered throughout the galaxy, crews began to speak nervously about the human devils that appeared whenever innocents were threatened. Professor Welkan, still teaching at Centauri University, updated his lectures. Again. "Students, we are seeing the emergence of what military historians call a force multiplier. The humans are not just building a powerful fleet, they are building a powerful reputation. Their enemies fear them. But more importantly, potential allies respect them. A student raised her hand. Professor, do you think the humans are trying to become the dominant power in the galaxy? Professor Wellcan considered the question carefully. I think they are trying to become something more dangerous than a dominant power. They are trying to become indispensable. Back on Earth, Admiral Bennett received reports of the Stormbreakers' actions with satisfaction. The plan was working. Exactly as intended, human dreadnoughts were not just weapons of war. They were instruments of diplomacy, symbols of protection, and guarantees of justice. David, she said to her aide, send a message to all Dreadnought. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything seen in centuries. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the great chamber, their voices creating a cacophony of fear, anger, and confusion. At the center of it all, Secretary General Morden struggled to maintain order as report after report detailed humanity's growing influence throughout the galaxy. Order, Morden called, his voice amplified through the chamber. We will address each concern in turn. Ambassador Zektar of the hegemony stood first, his 6 arms gesturing dramatically. Fellow council members, the human menace grows stronger each day. Their warships patrol trade routes with impunity. Their reputation spreads like a plague throughout civilized space. We must act before it is too late. Murmurs of agreement rippled through sections of the chamber, but they were countered by voices of dissent from other areas. The galaxy was beginning to split into factions, and humanity was the dividing line. Admiral Quintel of the Centauri Republic rose from her seat, her blue skin shimmering under the chamber lights. With respect, Ambassador Zektar, your previous attempts to handle the humans have been notably unsuccessful. Perhaps it is time to consider alternatives to military action. The comment drew angry responses from the more militant factions, but Admiral Quintel continued. The Centauri Republic has been monitoring human activities in the neutral zones. Their ships protect civilian convoys, defend refugee camps, and maintain order in regions where our own forces have been ineffective. We should be asking ourselves why we view this as a threat. War Chief Grendock of the Krex Dominions slammed his massive fist on his delegation's table. Because they make us look weak! Every pirate fleet they destroy, every convoy they protect, every colony they defend, it shows the galaxy that we cannot maintain order in our own territories. The truth of his words hung in the air like a weight. For generations, the major powers had maintained their authority through fear and superior technology. But humanity was offering something different. Protection based on principle rather than politics. In the observer gallery, Ambassador Elena Rodriguez watched the proceedings with growing satisfaction. She was officially attending as a diplomatic observer, but her real purpose was intelligence gathering. What she was seeing exceeded her most optimistic expectations. The council is fragmenting, she whispered into her communication device. The moderate factions are starting to question the hardliners' approach. The response came from Admiral Bennett on Earth. How many potential allies do you see? Rodriguez studied the chamber carefully. At least 40% of the representatives seem open to alternatives to military confrontation. The Centauri Republic is already making overtures, and several smaller powers are following their lead. As the session continued, the divisions became more apparent. The militant factions, led by the hegemony, the Krex Dominion, and the Swift Wind Empire, called for immediate military action against humanity. But they were opposed by a growing coalition of moderate voices who questioned the wisdom of attacking a species that had done nothing but protect innocent civilians. The debate reached its climax when Admiral Quintel made a formal proposal. "I move that the Centauri Republic be authorized to open direct diplomatic negotiations with the human government." The chamber erupted. Hardline delegates shouted accusations of treason, while moderates applauded the proposal. Secretary General Morden struggled to restore order as the meeting devolved into chaos. Ambassador Zektar's voice cut through the noise. "This is exactly what the humans want. They seek to divide us, to turn our own members against the Council's authority. We cannot allow this precedent." But Admiral Quintel was not backing down. "The precedent I'm concerned about is attacking civilian populations because we're afraid of their military escorts. The humans have done nothing to threaten our territory or our people. They have simply proven more effective at maintaining order than we have been." The vote, when it finally came, was closer than anyone had expected. The proposal to authorize diplomatic contact with humanity passed by a narrow margin, with several traditionally hardline delegations abstaining rather than voting against it. As the session ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, Ambassador Rodriguez made her way to the Centauri delegation. Admiral Quintel greeted her with what might have been a smile. It was hard to tell with Centauri facial features. "Ambassador Rodriguez," Quintel said in accented but clear English, "I believe we have much to discuss." 3 days later, Rodriguez found herself aboard a Centauri diplomatic vessel, the Star Whisper, traveling toward human space for the first formal meeting between Earth and a major galactic power. The ship itself was a marvel of alien engineering. Graceful curves and flowing lines that made it look more like a work of art than a spacecraft. Captain Velmar of the Star Whisper was a career diplomat as well as a ship commander, and he used the journey to brief Rodriguez on Centauri culture and politics. "My people value harmony and balance," he explained as they stood in the ship's observation lounge, watching stars stream past. "We have grown concerned about the increasing militarization of galactic politics. The humans didn't start this militarization," Rodriguez pointed out. "We were simply responding to attacks on our colonies. We understand that. It is precisely why many of us believe cooperation is preferable to confrontation." Velmar paused, studying the human ambassador. "May I speak freely?" "Of course." "Your species fights differently than we are accustomed to. Most galactic powers wage war for territory, resources, or political advantage. But humans seem to fight for principles?" Rodriguez nodded. "We have a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. When we see pirates attacking medical convoys or military forces targeting civilians, we can't just stand by and watch, even when those civilians are not human. Especially then. It proves we're not just another aggressive species looking to expand our territory. We're a species that believes in justice." The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the bridge. Captain Velmar's communication device chirped, and his expression grew serious as he listened to the message. "Ambassador," he said after the transmission ended, "we have a problem. My government is receiving reports of a massive fleet buildup in the hegemony systems. It appears the hardline factions are preparing for military action." Rodriguez felt a chill run down her spine. "How massive?" "Preliminary reports suggest over 600 warships from multiple allied powers, the largest fleet assembled in galactic history." As the Star Whisper continued toward human space, both diplomats realized they were racing against time. The moderates were winning the political battle, but the hardliners were preparing to settle the matter with force. On Earth, Admiral Bennett received the intelligence reports with grim determination. 600 ships was far more than humanity's current fleet could handle, even with their technological advantages. But she had been preparing for this possibility. "David," she called to her aide, "activate the emergency protocol. Recall every ship to Earth immediately." "All of them, Admiral? That will leave the colonies defenseless. If Earth falls, the colonies won't matter, and if we can break this fleet here, it might be the last major battle we have to fight." Throughout human space, dreadnoughts began converging on Earth. The Titan, Wolverine, Thunderbolt, Stormbreaker, and dozens of other legendary ships left their patrol routes and headed home. But Bennett knew even her entire fleet would not be enough. That's when the first surprise arrived. "Admiral," David reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the Centauri Republic. They're offering military assistance." Bennett looked up from her tactical displays in surprise. "Military assistance?" "Admiral Quintel is en route with a squadron of their most advanced ships. She says the Centauri Republic will not stand by while civilians are targeted for military destruction." Before Bennett could fully process this development, more reports came in. The Rigel Collective was sending medical ships to assist with casualties. The Altair Federation was offering their space stations as repair facilities. Even some of the smaller council members were quietly providing intelligence about the incoming enemy fleet. The galaxy was choosing sides, and not everyone was choosing against humanity. Ambassador Rodriguez, now aboard an Earth ship as the diplomatic mission, was cut short, watched the reports come in with amazement. "Admiral, what's happening here?" Bennett studied the tactical display, showing friendly forces converging on Earth alongside human ships. "I think we're witnessing the birth of something new, Ambassador. For the first time in galactic history, species are allying based on shared principles rather than shared interests. Will it be enough?" Bennett looked at the estimated size of the incoming enemy fleet and made her decision. "It's going to have to be. Send a message to all human colonies and allied forces. Tell them this is where we make our stand." As the largest fleet in galactic history prepared to assault Earth, humanity and its new allies prepared to show the galaxy what happened when you threatened not just a world, but an idea. The tide was turning, and the hardliners were about to learn that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the odds. Admiral Lisa Bennett stood in the command center of Earth Defense Headquarters, watching the largest display screen she had ever seen. The holographic projection showed the solar system in perfect detail, with hundreds of ship icons moving toward Earth from every direction. Most were colored blue, representing human and allied forces. But at the edge of the display, a massive red formation was approaching, over 800 enemy warships flying under the banner of the Pure Galaxy Coalition. Status report. She called to the room full of officers coordinating humanity's defense. Commander David Kim stepped forward with a data pad. "Admiral, we have confirmed positions on 783 enemy vessels, Hegemony, Krex, Swift Wind Empire, and 12 smaller powers. They're maintaining formation approximately 6 light hours out. Our forces: 47 human dreadnoughts, 38 destroyers, and support vessels. The Centauri have provided 12 heavy cruisers, and we have medical and supply ships from 6 other allied species." Bennett did the math in her head. Even with their technological advantages, humanity was outnumbered more than 6 to 1. Under normal circumstances, it would be considered a hopeless battle, but these were not normal circumstances. "David, what's the status on the defensive grid?" "All orbital platforms are online. Automated defense satellites are positioned throughout the inner system. Every civilian ship that can mount weapons has been equipped and given assignments. Bennett nodded. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Instead of meeting the enemy, fleet in open space where numbers would matter most, she was going to draw them into Earth's defensive network. Every space station, every orbital facility, every converted civilian vessel would become part of a massive trap. But first, she had to convince the enemy to enter that trap. Commodore Jake Morrison arrived from the docking bay where his shuttle had just landed. The Titan was in orbit with the rest of the fleet, but Morrison had been summoned to headquarters for final planning. "Admiral," he said, taking his place at the command table. "The fleet commanders are ready." Bennett looked around the table at the faces of humanity's finest officers. Captain Ryan Cross had left the Wolverine to attend in person. Commander Amy Foster was participating via hologram from the Thunderbolt. Captain Kate Sullivan was present from the Stormbreaker. These were the people who had built humanity's reputation as the galaxy's protectors. "Ladies and gentlemen," Bennett began, "we all know the odds. The enemy expects to overwhelm us through sheer numbers. They believe that by destroying Earth, they can break the spirit of human resistance and prove to the galaxy that our way of thinking is weak." She paused, looking each officer in the eye. "They're wrong. Today we're going to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten not just our home, but everything we stand for." Captain Cross leaned forward. "Admiral, the plan calls for us to fall back toward Earth while fighting a delaying action. Some of the crew are questioning whether we're running from a fight." Bennett smiled grimly. "Ryan, we're not running from anything. We're leading them exactly where we want them. The enemy fleet is designed for open space combat where they can use their numbers effectively. But Earth's defensive grid was built to protect our homeworld from exactly this kind of assault." Commander Foster's hologram flickered as she spoke from her ship. "Ma'am, what about the civilian population? 800 ships could turn Earth into a graveyard." "That's exactly what they're counting on," Bennett replied. "They want to make an example of humanity to discourage other species from following our path. But they've made one critical error in their planning." "Which is?" asked Captain Sullivan. "They've never fought humans defending their home before." 6 hours later, the enemy fleet reached the edge of the solar system. Admiral Zektar commanded from his massive flagship, the Galactic Dominion, a ship the size of a small city and armed with enough weapons to destroy entire fleets. Beside him stood War Chief Grendok of the Krex and Admiral Velthara of the Swift Wind Empire. The Pure Galaxy Coalition had united the galaxy's most militaristic powers under a single banner. "Tactical analysis," Zektar ordered, as his sensors swept the inner system. "Sir," his aide reported, "we detect 47 human capital ships and supporting vessels. They appear to be positioned for a fighting withdrawal toward their homeworld." Grendok's massive form shifted in satisfaction. "Exactly as expected. They will try to make us pay for every kilometer, but they cannot stand against our numbers." Admiral Velthara studied the sensor readings with a more professional eye. "Their formation is interesting. Very tight coordination between ship groups. They're treating the entire fleet as a single entity." "It will not matter," Zektar declared. "Today, we end the human threat permanently. All ships advance to attack formation. Target their capital ships first." The Pure Galaxy fleet moved into the solar system like a plague of metal locusts. Their formation was a masterpiece of military coordination. Heavy ships in the center, fast attack craft on the flanks, support vessels protected in the rear. It was a formation designed to crush any resistance through overwhelming firepower. Commodore Morrison, commanding the human fleet from the Titan, watched the enemy approach on his tactical display. The alien formation was impressive, but it was also exactly what Admiral Bennett had predicted. All ships, he broadcast on the fleet frequency, implement fighting withdrawal plan Alpha. Make them work for every meter, but do not get caught in a static engagement. The human dreadnoughts began to fall back toward Earth, firing as they went. Their railguns reached out across impossible distances, sending tungsten projectiles into the alien formation at velocities that made dodging impossible. Missile swarms spread out like clouds of death, forcing the enemy to expend ammunition on point defense. But the humans were careful not to inflict too much damage too quickly. They needed the enemy to follow them, to commit fully to the assault on Earth. The fighting withdrawal took 6 hours, with running battles throughout the solar system. The human ships took damage but kept fighting, always staying just ahead of the enemy advance. To the aliens, it looked like humanity's legendary fleet was finally being ground down by superior numbers. Admiral Zektar watched the human ships fall back and felt satisfaction building in his chest. They fight well, but they cannot escape their fate. Continue the advance. What the enemy fleet didn't realize was that they were being drawn into the most sophisticated defensive network ever constructed. Earth's orbital defenses had been built over decades, layer upon layer of weapons platforms, missile launchers, and automated systems. More importantly, every approach to Earth had been carefully mapped and analyzed. The human fleet knew exactly where every weapon was positioned and how to lead the enemy into the most effective killing zones. "Sir," Morrison's tactical officer reported, "we're approaching the outer defense perimeter. All platforms report ready." Morrison nodded. It was time for Phase 2 of Admiral Bennett's plan. All ships, implement defense pattern Omega. Show them what it means to threaten Earth. What happened next would be remembered as the moment when humanity revealed its true nature. The human fleet, which had been fighting a careful withdrawal for hours, suddenly turned and attacked with a ferocity that shocked the enemy. At the same time, Earth's defensive grid came online. Thousands of automated weapons platforms opened fire simultaneously. Missile launchers that had been hidden in asteroids and debris fields revealed themselves and added their firepower to the human assault. The space around Earth became a storm of death and destruction that caught the alien fleet completely off guard. Admiral Zektar watched in horror as his lead formations were shredded by the unexpected volume of fire. "Impossible! Where did all these weapons come from?" "Sir," his sensor officer called out in panic, "I'm reading weapon signatures from every direction. The entire inner system is armed." War Chief Grendock realized the truth first. "We've been led into a trap. The humans weren't retreating. They were positioning us for slaughter. But it was too late to withdraw. The pure galaxy fleet was committed to the assault, surrounded by Earth's defenses and facing an enemy that was no longer pulling its punches." In Earth's command center, Admiral Bennett watched the battle unfold exactly as planned. The enemy fleet was trapped in the killing zone, taking casualties from every direction, while the human ships pressed their attack with ruthless efficiency. "All orbital platforms, concentrate fire on their command ships," she ordered. "Let's cut the head off this snake." As the largest space battle in galactic history raged around Earth, one thing became clear to everyone watching. Humanity had not just been building ships and weapons. They had been building the ultimate expression of their philosophy, that some things were worth any sacrifice to defend. The pure galaxy coalition had come to destroy humanity's homeworld. Instead, they were about to learn why threatening Earth was the biggest mistake anyone could make. The Battle of Earth had been raging for 3 hours, and space around humanity's homeworld had become a graveyard of twisted metal and dying ships. The Pure Galaxy Coalition's massive fleet, once numbering over 800 vessels, was being systematically destroyed by Earth's defensive grid and the fury of the human dreadnoughts. But Admiral Zektar was not finished yet. "All remaining ships," he broadcast from his damaged flagship, "breakthrough formation. Target the human homeworld directly. If we cannot defeat their fleet, we will destroy what they fight to protect." Nearly 200 surviving alien ships formed up for a final desperate assault on Earth itself. They had been bloodied and battered, but they still carried enough firepower to reduce continents to ash. It was a last gambit born of rage and desperation. Commodore Jake Morrison, commanding the human fleet from the bridge of the Titan, watched the enemy formation change on his tactical display. The aliens were abandoning all pretense of military strategy and going straight for Earth's surface. "All ships," he broadcast, "they're targeting the planet. Stop them. Whatever it takes, stop them." What followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The human dreadnoughts, which had been fighting with calculated precision for hours, suddenly fought with a primal fury that shocked even their allies. These were no longer just warships defending territory. They were the guardians of humanity's cradle, and they would die before allowing it to be harmed. Captain Ryan Cross, aboard the UES Wolverine, saw an enemy heavy cruiser breaking through the defensive line, its weapons charging for a bombardment of North America. Without hesitation, he ordered his ship directly into the alien vessel's path. "Sir," his executive officer Charlie Bennett called out, "collision course confirmed. We won't survive the impact." Cross looked at the tactical display showing 6 billion humans living on the world below. "Then we'd better make it count. All power to forward shields. Ram them." The Wolverine accelerated directly toward the alien cruiser, its armored prow aimed at the enemy ship's center mass. The aliens tried to change course, but momentum and physics made evasion impossible. The two ships collided at tremendous speed, the impact visible from the planet's surface as a brilliant flash of light. Both vessels were destroyed instantly, but the alien bombardment of Earth's surface was prevented. Commander Amy Foster on the Thunderbolt found herself facing 5 enemy capital ships simultaneously as they tried to break through to attack the orbital shipyards. Her experimental weapons systems had been performing flawlessly, but now she pushed them beyond their design limits. "Chief Santos," she called to her engineering officer, "I need everything the weapons can give us. Override the safety protocols. Commander, if we push the magnetic coils past maximum, they could overload and destroy the ship." Foster looked at the enemy ships closing on the shipyards, where thousands of civilians were working to evacuate. "Then we'd better hit them before that happens." The Thunderbolt's enhanced railguns fired in rapid sequence, each shot precisely targeted to cripple enemy vessels. The weapons performed magnificently for 90 seconds, destroying 3 alien ships and crippling the other 2. Then, exactly as Chief Santos had predicted, the magnetic coils overloaded. The explosion tore through the Thunderbolt's forward sections, but the ship's compartmentalized design contained the damage. Foster and her crew survived, and the shipyards were saved. Captain Kate Sullivan on the Stormbreaker faced her own impossible situation when a formation of Swiftwind Empire ships used their superior speed to bypass the main battle and head straight for the refugee camps that had been established on Luna. These camps housed civilians from dozens of species who had fled conflicts throughout the galaxy. Sullivan's ship was the only human vessel in position to intercept, but she was outnumbered 8-1 by ships designed specifically for high-speed combat. "Weapons," she ordered. "Target their lead ship. Missile spread, maximum yield. Captain, her tactical officer reported, at their current speed, they'll be past us in 30 seconds. We might get one good shot. Then we'd better make it perfect. The Stormbreaker's missiles launched in a carefully calculated pattern designed to account for the aliens' evasive maneuvers. The swift wind ships tried to dodge, but their high speed worked against them. Unable to change course quickly enough, they flew directly into the missile spread. 6 of the 8 alien ships were destroyed or disabled. The remaining 2, their formation broken and their confidence shattered, fled back toward the main battle rather than continue their attack on the refugee camps. But the most decisive moment of the battle came when Admiral Zektar's flagship, the Galactic Dominion, finally broke through Earth's defensive grid and prepared to bombard the planet's surface. The massive ship had absorbed tremendous damage but was still functional, and its weapons could devastate entire continents. Commodore Morrison on the Titan saw the enemy flagships approach and made a decision that would be remembered throughout galactic history. All remaining ships, he broadcast, converge on the flagship. We end this now. The surviving human dreadnoughts formed up around the Titan and charged directly at the Galactic Dominion. It was a formation that had never been attempted before. Multiple capital ships operating as a single entity, their weapons coordinated for maximum effect. Admiral Zektar watched the human ships approach and felt something he had never experienced before: genuine fear. The human vessels were scarred and damaged from hours of combat, but they moved with deadly purpose. They had abandoned all defensive considerations and were focused solely on stopping his ship from reaching Earth. All weapons, he ordered desperately.